Vivian, how long have you been standing there? Long enough. Let me explain.
There's nothing left to explain.
The crystal clinked. Not broke. Clinked. The sound of 600 people celebrating someone else's money. Vivian Hartwell stood near the window of the grand ballroom and held a glass of sparkling water and watched. She was good at watching. She had gotten very good at it over 9 years of being Grayson Hartwell's wife. The ballroom was everything Grayson did. Excessive in a way that looked effortless. 40 round tables draped in ivory linen. Centerpieces that cost more than most people's car payments. An orchestra in the corner playing something that cost more than the centerpieces. 600 people in black tie, all of them performing the same performance. Look how much we belong here. She belonged here. She had belonged here for 9 years. Her dress was midnight blue, custom made. It accommodated the life she was carrying without trying to hide it. 8 months along. Her back ached in a specific focused way that had become ordinary. Her feet had stopped being comfortable somewhere around month 5. She stood anyway, because this was what Grayson's wife did. She wore her hair up. She wore the pearl earrings he had given her on their 5th anniversary. She smiled at the right moments and said the right things to the right people and held her sparkling water like it was champagne, because it was easier than explaining why she was not drinking champagne. She was very good at this. She watched the room, and then she saw him. Her eyes found Grayson automatically. 9 years of marriage builds that kind of muscle memory. In any room, at any distance, she could locate him within seconds. She used to think that was love. She used to point to it as evidence. Look how attuned we are to each other. He was on the dance floor. That was not unusual. Grayson danced at these events. He was charming. He was expected to be charming. The room expected it. The board expected it. She expected it. She had made her peace with the fact that his charm belonged to the room before it belonged to her. But this was not charm. She knew the difference. After 9 years, she knew the exact line between performing warmth for a crowd and offering warmth to a person. She knew it because she crossed it herself every single evening at events like this one. She knew it because she had studied it. She knew it because she had once been the recipient of his real warmth and she would recognize it anywhere. He was dancing with Cassandra Pruitt, head of public relations for Hartwell Industries, 29 years old. Vivian had sat next to her at 3 company dinners, had asked her about her work, had thought each time that she was bright and efficient, and that Grayson was lucky to have her managing the company's public image. She was blonde, beautiful in a way that was carefully maintained but looked easy. She was wearing a red dress that cost less than anything else in the room and looked better than all of it. And Grayson's hand was on the small of her back, not the social hand, not the polite contact between colleagues' hand. The other hand, the intimate hand. The hand that says, I know this body. I have been here before. The hand that communicates something across a room that 600 people can see if they look directly at it. Vivian looked directly at it. The orchestra played on. The crystal clinked. And then Grayson leaned down. He said something close to Cassandra's ear. His mouth almost brushed her hair. Cassandra closed her eyes for half a second. And then she laughed. That laugh. Vivian had been told she had a beautiful laugh. Grayson used to say it was the first thing he noticed. She had believed him. She had carried that. She had taken it out sometimes quietly when she needed to remember that she was loved. Cassandra's laugh was the laugh of a woman who was comfortable, who belonged, not to the room, to him. The word landed somewhere between Vivian's sternum and her throat. Not a question, not a suspicion, a knowing. How long? Not a question either. Just the shape of it. Enormous and cold, arriving fully formed, like something her body had always understood, and her mind had been keeping very carefully in a locked room. The baby moved, a push against her ribs, a small fist or a small foot or something entirely itself.
Hello? I am here. We are in this together.
Vivian put her hand on the side of her belly. Automatic, she breathed. The water in her glass was cold. She could feel it through the crystal. She looked at the orchestra. She looked at the table nearest to her. Ivory linen, gold calligraphy place cards, a small decorative dish intended for cufflinks or business cards, or the things men carry that women hold for them. She set her water glass on the table. She reached for her left hand. The ring came off easily. She had noticed in the past few weeks that it had grown loose. She had told herself it was normal. She had told herself that pregnancy redistributes things. She had told herself a great many things. It slid free without resistance. She looked at it for a moment. 3 carats. Platinum setting. He had gotten down on one knee in the apartment they shared before they were married, the small one, the one that smelled like coffee and old wood floors, and she had said yes before he finished asking. She set the ring in the dish. It made a small sound, a clink, like crystal, like the sound of 600 people celebrating someone else's money. She picked up her evening bag. She walked to the exit, not quickly, not slowly. At the pace of a woman who has made a decision and is not reconsidering it. She did not look back at the dance floor. She did not look for his face in the crowd. She did not give the room the chance to witness her leaving. She simply left. The valet brought her car in 4 minutes. She thanked him. She tipped him. She got in and she pulled out of the circular drive of the Hartwell Grand Ballroom and she drove. She drove for 6 minutes before she turned into a parking garage 2 blocks from the hotel. She took a ticket from the machine. She found a space on the 3rd level and she pulled in and she put the car in park. She sat. The engine was still running. She left it running because the engine running meant she was almost doing something. She was almost a person in motion. If the engine was running, she had not stopped entirely. 3 times. Lock, unlock. Lock, unlock, lock. Her phone, his name on the screen. She had not pressed call. She was just looking at it. The contact photo was from their first year together. He was laughing at something she could no longer remember. He looked like a man she had loved very much. She turned the phone face down on the passenger seat. The parking garage smelled like exhaust and cold concrete. The fluorescent light above her flickered twice and steadied. Somewhere on a lower level, a car door shut. Then silence. She sat in that silence for 11 minutes. She knew it was 11 minutes because she counted. Not deliberately. The way you count when your mind is trying to find something to hold on to and it grabs the nearest number. Then she started the car and she drove north. She drove through the city and out of it. She drove past the exit for the neighborhood where they lived, the penthouse she had helped design, the nursery she had finished last month, the mural she had chosen and repainted twice until it was exactly right, and she did not take that exit. She drove north. The baby pushed against her ribs again. She put her hand there. The radio played something she did not hear. A country station. The kind of music that is always known about loss and does not apologize for it. She drove north for 40 minutes. Dorothy Calloway's farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel road in the Virginia countryside, surrounded by old oaks that had been there longer than any of them and would outlast all of them. The porch light was on. It was always on. Dorothy Calloway was the kind of woman who left the light on and did not make a production of it. Vivian pulled up the gravel drive and turned off the engine. She sat in the car for 2 more minutes. Then she got out. She walked to the porch. The door opened before she knocked. Her mother stood in the doorway in her housecoat and slippers, wide awake, the way mothers are wide awake when their children need them even before the phone rings. Dorothy looked at Vivian's face. She looked at Vivian's left hand. She looked at Vivian's face again. Well, Dorothy said, just that, one word, and in it somehow everything. I knew, I am here. Come in, you are safe. She stepped aside. Vivian came in. The house smelled like cedar and chamomile, and the particular kind of warmth that belongs to kitchens that have been used for decades by someone who understands that feeding people is love made practical. The kitchen light was on. The radio was on low, same country station. The music followed her. Dorothy put the kettle on. Vivian sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she had done homework at age 11, where she had cried after her first heartbreak at 16, where she had sat, the morning after her father's funeral, and eaten toast she did not taste while Dorothy sat across from her and said nothing at all, and that nothingness was the most comforting thing in the world. Dorothy made tea. She put 2 cups on the table. She sat down across from her daughter. She did not say, what happened? She did not say, I knew this would happen. She did not say, you should have listened to me. You should have seen the signs. You should have done anything differently than you did. She sat. She waited. Vivian looked at her mother's face. She fell apart. Not loudly. She had never done things loudly. But something that she had been holding very carefully, very precisely, for the entire drive and the 11 minutes in the parking garage and the 6 minutes in the ballroom, and maybe longer, much, much longer than that, came undone all at once. She cried the way she had not cried since her father died. The way that is not about one thing, but about everything that has been stored behind the wall of that one thing for years. Grief that has been waiting for permission. Grief that has found it. Dorothy put one hand on Vivian's hand. She left it there. The kettle screamed. She got up. She made the tea. She sat back down. She did not say, shh. She did not say it will be okay. She did not say anything at all. She just kept her hand on Vivian's hand and let the crying run its course. Some things cannot be shortened. They have to go all the way through. Eventually, a long time later, the kitchen clock reading 4:47 in the morning. The crying was done. Vivian picked up the tea, cold now. She drank it anyway. How long? Dorothy asked. Her voice was quiet, not cautious. Just appropriately small for 4:47 in the morning when the world has come apart. I don't know, Vivian said. Her voice was rough. Strange in her own throat, a year, maybe longer. And the baby? His, she said it without hesitation. I know that. Dorothy nodded. Once. Good, she said. Vivian looked at her. Good? Fewer complications, Dorothy said. You have enough of those. Vivian looked at the table, and somewhere in the exhaustion and the grief and the cold tea, she almost laughed. All not quite, but almost. Dorothy stood. She rinsed the cups. She turned off the kitchen light. She left the small one above the stove burning because Dorothy Calloway always left a light on. The guest room is made up, she said. It's always made up. Vivian climbed the stairs. The guest room ceiling was the same ceiling it had been when she was 22. The water stain in the corner. The hairline crack running east to west. The faint smell of lavender sachets in the closet. She lay down on top of the covers because the bed was made and she could not bring herself to unmake it. She was still in her midnight blue gown. The pearls were still in her ears. Her left hand was bare. She looked at the crack in the ceiling. She did not sleep, but she rested, and resting right now was enough. She was still awake when the Virginia morning arrived. Not dramatically. The light just changed. The darkness outside the window shifted from black to gray to the particular pale blue of early morning in the country, where there are no streetlights to compete with it and the sky gets to be its full self. A bird started, then another, then the whole messy, unrehearsed chorus of it. Vivian lay on the made bed and listened. Her back ached from lying on the covers without a pillow under her knees. The baby had been quiet for several hours. She shifted carefully, and the baby shifted with her, finding a new position, settling, alive, present. Hers. She thought about the ring in the dish. She thought about the way Cassandra's eyes had closed for half a second when Grayson leaned in. She thought about the 43 unread notifications on her phone, which was still face down on the seat of her car in the gravel driveway, which she had not brought inside, which she was not ready to touch. At 7:15, she heard Dorothy downstairs. The sound of the kettle. Cabinets opening and closing. The radio still on, a different morning program now, voices low and even. She got up. She washed her face in the guest bathroom. The mirror was the same mirror she had looked into as a teenager, and at 19 and at 26 when she came home for Christmas with Grayson for the first time and stood in this bathroom and looked at herself and thought, this is real. I am really here. This is really happening. She looked at herself now, 34 years old, 8 months pregnant, in a midnight blue gown that had been appropriate for a charity gala and was completely absurd in a farmhouse bathroom at 7:15 in the morning. Pearl earrings still in. Face that showed everything about the night in the way faces do when you stop asking them not to. She took the pearls out. She set them on the edge of the sink. She looked at herself without them. There she was. Downstairs, Dorothy had made eggs. Scrambled, the way Vivian had always liked them, with too much butter and black pepper and no apology for either. Orange juice. Toast. The farmhouse table set with the everyday dishes, the ones with the faded blue border, the ones she had eaten off of every day of her childhood. Vivian sat down. She ate. Not performed eating. Actual eating. She was hungrier than she had expected. The baby was always hungry, but this was a different kind of hunger. The kind that comes from having been very far from yourself and returning. Dorothy sat across from her and ate her own eggs and said nothing. They ate in silence for a while. The morning light came through the window above the sink and landed on the table between them, warm and exact. He texted, Vivian said eventually. A lot. I imagine so, Dorothy said. I haven't looked. When you're ready. Vivian turned the orange juice glass in her hands. I'm going to need a lawyer. Dorothy set down her fork. She looked at her daughter directly. The way she had always looked at things she wanted to be honest about. I know someone, she said, in Richmond. Retired now, but she would know who to call. I already have a name, Vivian said. Dorothy raised an eyebrow. Miles Ashworth, Vivian said. He was in the news a few years ago. A case involving a pharmaceutical CEO. The wife received it was a significant settlement. Dorothy nodded slowly. You've been thinking about this for a while. It was not quite a question. It was the kind of statement that offers you room to either confirm it or not. I've been watching, Vivian said. I didn't want to believe what I was watching. But I was watching. Dorothy picked her fork back up. Well, she said, that is not stupidity, that is hope. Vivian looked at the morning light on the table between them. I need to go get my phone, she said. She went to the car. The gravel was cold and damp under her feet, because she was still in her gown and the ballroom shoes, and neither of those things were suited to a Virginia morning in October. The phone had 43 notifications. She stood by the car in the cold morning air and looked at the notifications without opening them. Grayson's name appeared 39 times. 3 unknown numbers. One from Penelope, which simply said, Call me when you can. She opened Penelope's message first. Then she saw the text from the unknown number. She read it. She read it twice. She stood very still next to her car in the cold. The text said, "I need you to know I didn't know you were still together. He told me you were separated. Can we please talk?" It was signed with the name, Cassandra Pruitt. Vivian stood there for a long time. A crow landed on the fence post at the edge of the driveway. It looked at her. She looked at it. It flew away. She went back inside. Dorothy looked at her face and asked nothing. Vivian sat at the kitchen table with her phone. She opened Grayson's messages. She read the first four. The arc of them was predictable. Confusion, escalating, then managed concern, then controlled warmth. He was performing for the text message the same way he performed for the room, the same way he always did. She closed his messages. She thought about the ring in the dish. She thought about the crow on the fence post. She opened her contacts. She found the number she had saved 3 years ago after reading the newspaper article about the pharmaceutical CAO's wife. She had saved it without a name, just Attorney Richmond. She had told herself she saved it out of professional interest. She looked at her bare left hand. She was done telling herself things. She called. An assistant answered on the second ring. Professional. Warm in the efficient way of people who work for professionals who understand that warmth is part of the job. Miles Ashworth's office, the assistant said. "My name is Vivian," Vivian said. "Vivian Calloway Hartwell. I would like to make an appointment." There was a pause. 4 seconds she counted. "Miss Calloway," the assistant said, using her maiden name, which she had not given. "Mr. Ashworth has an opening Thursday at 2. "I'll take it," Vivian said. She hung up. She put the phone face down on the table. She looked at the window. The morning light was still there. The crow was not. She heard Dorothy in the next room, the sound of a drawer opening, the sound of something being folded, small domestic sounds, the sounds of a house that has always been occupied by someone sensible. She folded her hands on the table. The baby moved, slow and deliberate, a shift from right to left. "Okay," Vivian said quietly.
To herself, to the baby.
"To the morning." "Okay." She sat there in the farmhouse kitchen in her midnight blue gown and her bare feet and her empty left hand, and she was as frightened as she had ever been in her life. She was also, in a way she could not yet name, beginning. She went upstairs and she lay back down. This time she slept. Not well, but she slept. And when she woke up, the sun was high, and Dorothy had put a blanket over her and left a sandwich on the nightstand with a glass of water, and the small practical thoughtfulness of a woman who has been getting people through things for 62 years. Vivian ate the sandwich. She lay there and she looked at the ceiling crack and she thought, "I was going to tell him about the nursery mural tonight. He has never once asked to see it." She had been going to tell him. She had been waiting for the right moment. She had been waiting for his attention to land on her, specifically individually, with the weight of a man who was actually interested in the answer. She had been waiting for 9 years. She looked at the ceiling crack. She did not cry again. The crying was done. At least this particular crying was done. Something else was beginning. She was not sure yet what to call it, but she could feel it. Quiet, certain. Taking up residence in the place the grief had occupied, she would know what to call it later. For now, she ate the sandwich. She drank the water. She looked at the ceiling. She let herself rest inside the beginning without needing to name it yet. She texted Penelope at noon. 2 words, I know. Penelope called back in 45 seconds, which meant she had been sitting with her phone in her hand. "I was at the gala," Penelope said before Vivian could speak. Her voice was careful, tight, the voice of someone choosing words with both hands. "I saw it." "Viv, I know," Vivian said again. "I saw it too." A breath on the other end. Relief mixed with something else, something that had been held for a long time and was finally being allowed to exhale. "Where are you?" Penelope asked. "My mother's." "Good. That is exactly right." A pause. "How bad is it out there?" "The coverage?" Vivian had looked. She had made herself look that morning before the sandwich. 3 celebrity sites. The photographs were not explicit. They were worse than explicit. They were intimate. A man and a woman on a dance floor. His hand. Her eyes. The way a body orients itself toward another body that it knows. "Bad enough," Vivian said. "He's going to say it was nothing. He's going to say I misread it." "He danced with her like that in front of 600 people, Penelope said, including 3 board members and a gossip columnist. "He is not going to be able to say much of anything." Vivian moved to the window of the guest room. Outside, the October garden was winding down. The dahlias were still going, stubborn and orange. Her mother's garden had always had the most stubborn flowers. "I need Miles Ashworth," she said. "I have an appointment Thursday." The pause this time was different. "Specific, you already know his name," Penelope said. "I've known it for 3 years." Silence. Pen, Vivian said. How long have you known about Cassandra Pruitt? The silence was longer this time. The kind that is its own answer. 4 months, Penelope said. It came out quietly, like something she was ashamed of. I heard it at a company function. I didn't have proof. I kept telling myself, I kept hoping it was gossip. And not. She stopped. Started again. I should have told you. I know I should have. I just didn't know how. Vivian looked at the dahlias. She thought about what it would have changed. If Penelope had told her 4 months ago, if she had confronted him then, if the conversation had happened in October instead of at a gala with 600 witnesses. She thought about this for a moment. You didn't know what I would do with it, she said. No, neither did I, she said. So, another exhale from Penelope. This one different. What can I do? Right now, today, what do you need? Information, Vivian said. About Hartwell Industries. Specifically, about a subsidiary called Hartwell Meridian Holdings. Silence. Sharp this time. I don't know anything about that. I know. I just need you to remember the name in case I need someone who knows it. Okay, Penelope said slowly. Viv, what do you know? Not yet. I'll know more Thursday. She said goodbye. She went downstairs. Dorothy was in the garden. Vivian could see her through the window in her old canvas jacket cutting back the dahlias. Methodical. Unhurried. The way she did everything. Vivian went to the kitchen and made herself a cup of decaf and sat at the table and opened the text from Cassandra Pruitt again. She read it a third time. He told me you were separated. She thought about that. The specific construction of the lie. Not I'm getting divorced. Not my marriage is complicated. Separated, past tense. The decisions had already been made. The details were just being worked out. Nothing to feel guilty about. Nothing to question. It was a specific kind of lie. The kind that understands its audience. Cassandra Pruitt was not a woman who would knowingly get involved with a married man. Grayson had read that. He had adjusted accordingly. She had been watching him for 9 years. She knew exactly how he read people. The memory flooding started there. Not a tidal wave, a slow rising, water finding its level, the art curator position. 6 months into their marriage. The Whitmore Foundation. She had been so certain. She had the offer letter in her hand, and she was already mentally rearranging her schedule, already picturing the commute, already feeling the particular satisfaction of work she was good at. She had put the letter on the kitchen island. She had turned around. Grayson had looked at it the way he looked at things that were inconvenient, not with anger, with a kind of thoughtful neutrality that was somehow more chilling than anger. I just don't know how that works with my schedule, he had said. Not our schedule. My schedule. She had waited. For him to add something. For him to say, but let's figure it out. For him to say, I want you to do this. For him to say anything that suggested her professional life was a variable he was willing to rearrange his life for. He had looked back at his phone. She had called the Whitmore Foundation the next morning. She had said she needed more time to decide. She had given herself a week. In that week, Grayson had mentioned his schedule twice more, in different contexts. In passing, without ever referring to the position directly. On the 7th day, she had called back and declined. He had never mentioned it again. Not once in 9 had he said, I know you turned that down for me. Not once had he offered anything in its place. She had told herself she made the choice. She had. She had also made it inside a room where the walls kept moving closer. The Paris trip, their 3rd anniversary. She had researched. She had booked. She had been so pleased with herself, the little hotels she found, the afternoon she planned at the Musée d'Orsay, the dinner reservation she had made 4 months in advance at a restaurant she had read about for years. She had put the itinerary on the refrigerator. The board meeting came up 2 weeks before departure. He had not asked her to cancel. He had just said, I don't know how this is going to resolve in time. He had said maybe next year. He had said you could still go if you want to. The last one was the cruelest, because they both knew she would not go alone. And he knew she knew, and she knew he knew she knew. And the offer of permission was the same as the withdrawal of it. She did not reschedule. She had a friend, Margot, an artist she had met in graduate school, a woman who made paintings that looked like they were lit from inside. They had coffee every Sunday for years. Margot was the kind of friend who said true things out loud and laughed at her own worst days and asked questions that assumed you had more interior life than you were showing. Grayson had met Margot at a dinner party. On the drive home, he said, I find her abrasive. He said it once more, casually, 3 weeks later, and a third time when Vivian mentioned their Sunday coffee plans. She had not canceled the coffee, not that Sunday, but she had started rescheduling. Small things, legitimate things, a conflict here, a commitment there. Margot had adjusted each time, and then one Sunday, Vivian had a conflict that was not quite a conflict, but felt easier than going, and she had rescheduled, and Margot had not replied. She had called twice after that. Margot had been warm but busy. The Sundays never came back. Vivian had not consciously connected it to what Grayson said. She had told herself her friendship with Margot had simply run its natural course. People drift. It happens. She thought about that now at the kitchen table, with her decaf going cold. I thought love meant sacrifice, not erasure. The baby pushed against her ribs. She pushed back gently with 2 fingers. She opened her legal pad. She had found one in the guest room desk, left over from some other visit, some other version of herself, and she began to write. Not feelings, facts, dates, amounts, documents she had seen, meetings she had attended as just his wife, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching the room, absorbing numbers she had never been invited to understand. She was surprised by how much she had. 9 years of watching. 9 years of being underestimated in the most useful possible way. 9 years of being precisely the kind of woman that a man like Grayson Hartwell did not think it necessary to hide things from. She wrote for 2 hours. Dorothy came in from the garden and set a plate of apple slices on the table without comment and went back outside. Vivian ate the apple slices and kept writing. When she finally stopped, she had 6 pages. She looked at them. She thought about Cassandra's text. She thought about the 43 notifications on her phone. She thought about the ring in the dish and the sound it made when it landed. She thought, I am not crazy. I know what I saw. I know what I have always known. She did not answer Cassandra yet. She was not ready. But she did not delete the message either. She folded her 6 pages carefully and put them in the side pocket of the guest room closet, behind the lavender sachets. She sat back down. She ate dinner with Dorothy, roast chicken. The kind that takes 3 hours and smells like everything good about being somewhere safe. They ate and talked about almost nothing, the garden, a neighbor's new fence, whether the farmhouse gutters needed replacing before winter, normal things, ordinary things, things that had nothing to do with the gala or the dance or the ring in the dish. She slept that night, deeply, longer than she expected, like her body understood that she was in the place where she was allowed to rest and was taking the opportunity. When she woke up, it was Thursday. Miles Ashworth's office was nothing like Grayson's. Grayson's office was 52 floors up, all glass and steel, and the specific cold perfection of a space designed to communicate power to everyone who entered it. Everything in it said, you are smaller than this room. Miles Ashworth's office had wood floors, actual bookshelves, books that had been read, with cracked spines and paper flags sticking out at angles. A window that faced a courtyard where a small fountain moved steadily and without drama. A coffee table that was old enough to have actual marks on it. The space said, we do serious work here and we do not need you to be impressed by the furniture. Miles Ashworth stood when she entered. He was 50, with the kind of face that had made itself by paying attention to things. He shook her hand. He looked at her face. Not at her belly, not at her left hand, not at the specific evidence of her situation, at her face. He gestured to the chair across from his. She sat. He sat. Tell me what you know, he said. She told him. She was organized. She had the legal pad. She went through it systematically, not emotionally. She had decided on the drive down that she was going to present this the way Beverly Trent would present it. No, she did not know Beverly Trent yet, but she had been watching Grayson do business for 9 years, and she knew what it looked like when someone controlled a room. It looked like this. Organized. Precise. One thing at a time. She told him about the gala. She told him about Cassandra's text. She told him what Penelope had said. She told him about the documents she had seen over 9 years, the trips to the Cayman Islands that were listed as board retreats, the conversation she had overheard 2 years ago between Grayson and his chief financial officer, the one about the Meridian structure, the one she had asked about once and been told it was just a subsidiary. Miles took notes by hand. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. He looked at his notes. He turned back a page. He turned forward again. Hartwell Meridian Holdings, he said. He registered it 4 years ago, she said. I saw the documents when I was looking for our property tax records. I thought it was a subsidiary. He told me it was a subsidiary. It may be, Miles said. Or it may be something else. He made a note. We will find out. What is my situation, she asked. You were married 9 years in a state with equitable distribution laws, he said. Your marital assets would be divided. There's a prenuptial agreement, she said. He paused. Not dramatically. The pause of a man who is recalibrating. Tell me about it, he said. She told him. The prenuptial agreement. 9 years ago, his lawyers and her lawyers across the table. Her lawyer then had been a woman named Frances. Older, specific, the kind of attorney who read every line and ask about every clause. Frances had found the infidelity clause. Grayson's lawyers had pushed back. Frances had held her ground. The infidelity clause gives the injured party the right to seek a greater share of marital assets in the event of proven infidelity, Vivienne said. Frances made sure the word proven was defined. Documented evidence, including photographs, witness testimony, or financial records demonstrating the support of a secondary relationship. Miles put down his pen. He looked at her. Photographs, he said. 3 celebrity sites published them this morning, she said. They are still up. Miles looked at her for one more second. Then he picked his pen back up. The other woman, he said, Cassandra Pruitt. She texted you. Yes. What did you do with that text? I saved it, Vivienne said. I haven't responded. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it yet. I want you to wait, Miles said. Don't respond yet. Let me make some inquiries first. All right. He put down his pen again, the second time. This time he sat back slightly. A small adjustment. The kind that means something is about to be human rather than professional. Miss Calloway, he said. I want to ask you something and I want you to take as much time as you need before you answer. She waited. Did you have any financial accounts in your own name during the marriage? She thought about it. A checking account. The one my mother set up for me when I turned 18. I kept it. Not for any specific reason. It just didn't occur to me to close it. Good, he said. Keep it. Don't move money into it. Don't change your patterns in any way. But good. She thought about that. The account at the Bank of Virginia with her mother's address as the contact. The one she had not thought about in years because she had never needed it. She had thought it was inertia. She thought now about Frances 9 years ago, reviewing the prenuptial agreement, flagging the infidelity clause, holding it in against the pressure of 3 lawyers on the other side of the table. She thought about what it meant that she had never closed that account. She had been preparing without knowing she was preparing. She had been watching without knowing she was watching. I stayed because I believed him, she thought. That is not stupidity. That is trust. And trust is not the same as blindness. She drove back to the farmhouse. She was hungry. The kind of hunger that is embarrassing in its specific physicality. She pulled into the grocery store in the small town nearest to her mother's house. She bought things. Actual things. Crackers and good cheese and a container of soup and apple juice and a bar of very good dark chocolate that cost more than it should, and she put it in the basket without thinking about it. She bought a bunch of orange dahlias from the bucket by the door. The same stubborn orange as her mother's garden. She put everything in the car. She sat in the driver's seat. She thought, I have to choose between the life I built and a life worth building. She did not resolve it. Not yet. She started the car. She drove back to the farmhouse. She gave Dorothy the dahlias. Dorothy put them in the blue pitcher on the kitchen windowsill. Neither of them said anything about it. They did not need to. After dinner, Vivienne went upstairs. She sat on the edge of the guest bed. She took out her phone. She opened the text from Cassandra Pruitt. She read it again. He told me you were separated. She thought about the specific intelligence of that lie, the way it had been constructed to work on someone with principles, the way it had given Cassandra permission to want something without guilt. She thought about Cassandra's laugh on the dance floor. She thought about whether Cassandra had known at some point that it was a lie. She thought about what it meant to believe something because you needed it to be true. She typed, I'm willing to talk. She pressed send. She put the phone down. She thought about Margot. She had looked her up the night before at 2 in the morning when sleep had escaped her. Margot had a gallery show opening in November. She had been in 2 group shows since they stopped having coffee. She was painting bigger now. The work was extraordinary. Vivienne thought I should have gone to her shows. She thought, I am going to go to her show in November. She lay back on the bed. The baby settled into the quiet with her. She thought about the prenuptial agreement and the infidelity clause and the photographs on 3 celebrity sites and the woman named Frances, who had held that clause in place against 3 lawyers. She thought Frances knew. She did not mean Frances knew about Cassandra. She meant something larger and more specific. Frances had sat across from her in a conference room 9 years ago and read every line of a document that was designed to protect someone other than Vivienne, and she had found the one thing in it that could be turned, and she had held it, and she had handed it to Vivienne without explaining exactly what she was handing her. Because Frances had understood something that Vivienne was only now beginning to understand, that in any agreement between unequal parties, there is always somewhere a clause that tilts the other way. You just have to find it. You have to have kept your eyes open long enough to find it. Vivienne had kept her eyes open. For 9 years, she had kept her eyes open. She had not known she was keeping them open for this, but she had. They met on a Tuesday. Not Roanoke. Not Richmond. A small town between the two that had a coffee shop called Mabel's that served actual pie and had no interest whatsoever in the Hartwell family or anyone connected to it. Vivian arrived first. She chose a corner table. She sat so that her back was to the wall and she could see the door. Cassandra Pruitt came in 6 minutes later. She was not what Vivian had expected. At the gala, Cassandra had been the woman in the red dress. Polished, confident, effortless in the way that only looks effortless from across a ballroom. In Mabel's, in a gray sweater with a coffee already in front of her that she was not drinking, she was someone else. She was young. That was the word that came first. Young in the way that reveals itself when the performance is removed. Not a threat, not an intruder, just a young woman who had been told the wrong thing at the worst possible time and had believed it. She stood when Vivian entered. She started to say something. She stopped. She sat back down. Vivian sat across from her. The table was very small. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and old wood and something being baked behind the counter. The window beside them faced a street where almost nothing was happening, which was exactly right. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Vivian waited. She had learned over 9 years of being underestimated that waiting is one of the most powerful things you can do in a room. Cassandra looked at the table, then at Vivian, then at the table again. "I didn't know," she said. Her voice was low, careful. The voice of someone who has rehearsed this. "I need to say that first. I know it doesn't change anything for you, but I need you to know that I would not have, that I never would have, if I had known." Vivian looked at her. "He told me you were separated," Cassandra said. "Over a year ago. That you had agreed to maintain appearances because of the board, because of the public image of the company. He said you were living apart but presenting together at certain events." She paused. "He said it was complicated." "It is always complicated," Vivian thought. "That is always the word. When did you find out it wasn't true?" she asked. Cassandra's jaw tightened. Not with anger at Vivian, with something older and more private. "December," she said. "Last December. I found a charge on a credit card that was in my name. An account I didn't know he'd set up. The charge was from a jeweler." She looked up. "The gift was not for me." Vivian processed that. "December, 10 months ago. So you knew for 10 months, she said. "I knew something was wrong for 10 months, Cassandra said. "I didn't know what to do with it, I told myself." She stopped. Her hands tightened around the untouched coffee. "I told myself things. The way you do when you are not ready to stop telling yourself things." Vivian understood that completely. She understood it at a cellular level. She did not say so. "Did you know about the pregnancy?" she asked. Cassandra closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, something in them was different, older. "Not until the gala photos. I saw the photos and I saw you in them, and I understood at that point everything I had not been allowing myself to understand." The coffee shop was playing something behind the counter, faint strings. Almost not there. Vivian looked at Cassandra. She looked at this young woman who had been handed a lie shaped like a permission slip, who had believed it because she had needed to, who had danced at a gala in front of 600 people and thought she was dancing with a man who was available. She thought, "He made us both small. He made all the women around him small, so he could feel large." She did not say this either. "Why are you here?" she asked. Cassandra reached into her bag. She pulled out a manila folder. She slid it across the table. Vivian looked at it. She did not open it yet. "He gave me signing authority," Cassandra said, "for an account connected to a subsidiary, Hartwell Meridian Holdings. He told me it was standard, that it was part of my role managing public communications, that there were discretionary funds for media relations and event management." She paused. I believed him. Vivian opened the folder. She looked at the numbers. She was quiet for a very long time. The numbers were not small. "How long have you had this?" she asked. "I pulled it together over the past 3 weeks," Cassandra said. "Since the gala. I went back through everything. Every record I had access to. Every statement on the account I had signing authority for." A breath. "Vivian, I don't know everything that's in there, but I know what it looks like." Vivian looked up from the folder. "What does it look like to you?" she asked. Cassandra looked at the table. "Like money going somewhere it's not supposed to go," she said. "For a long time." Vivian closed the folder. She held it carefully. The paper was thick and cool under her fingers. Official. Real. The kind of real that does not go away. She thought about Miles Ashworth and his courtyard fountain and his pen moving steadily across pages. She thought about the woman named Beverly Trent that Miles had mentioned, the forensic accountant. The one he said was very good and very discreet. She thought about the infidelity clause and the Bank of Virginia account and the prenuptial agreement and the 6 pages of notes in the pocket behind the lavender sachets. She thought about how many years she had been collecting things without knowing she was collecting them. She looked at Cassandra. She thought, we were both in his orbit. We were both shaped around his needs. She just got a different lie. The mechanics were the same. Thank you, she said. Cassandra looked up. She had not expected that word. I mean it, Vivian said. You didn't have to do this. I know, Cassandra said. But she stopped. Then, I don't want to be someone who helped him do this, even accidentally. I don't want that to be who I am. Vivian looked at her for a moment. She thought, that is not nothing. That is actually something. I'm going to need you to be willing to make a statement at some point, she said. Not now. But at some point, Cassandra nodded. Once. Without hesitation. Vivian picked up the folder. She stood. I'll be in touch, she said. She paid for both coffees. She drove back to the farmhouse through the afternoon light. October going into itself. The trees beginning to turn. She did not listen to the radio. She let the drive be what it was. The numbers from the folder sat in her mind, organizing themselves, taking their places. She understood what she was looking at. He never loved me, she thought. He loved the idea of me. He loved what I represented and what I managed and what I performed at 600-person galas in midnight blue gowns. He loved the version of me that was useful to his narrative. He did not love Vivian Calloway. That woman had not been fully visible in 9 years. She thought about that. The grief of it. The specific, enormous grief of mourning a person who was not quite real. She pulled onto the gravel drive. She sat in the car. The late afternoon light came through the windshield, and she just sat in it for a minute. Then she went inside and she called Miles Ashworth and she told him about the folder. Beverly Trent, 55 years old. Silver hair cut short. The kind of woman who sat down at a table and immediately made you feel that the table had been waiting for her. She spoke in numbers the way other people spoke in sentences. She was precise with the way other people were casual. She came to Miles's office on a Monday morning 3 weeks after the gala. Vivian sat across from her. Miles sat at the head of the table. Beverly sat at the other end. The folder from Cassandra was open between them, along with 17 other documents that Beverly had assembled in the 3 weeks since Miles had engaged her. 17 documents. Vivian had not known there would be 17. Beverly said, Hartwell Meridian Holdings is not a subsidiary. She said it the way you say something that is both obvious and devastating, without apology for the devastation. It is a vehicle, she continued. Beginning approximately 18 months ago, your husband began routing a portion of Hartwell Industries' operating revenue through a series of limited liability companies. Each LLC limited liability company was registered in a different state: Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada. Each one had a minimal paper presence and a maximum transfer capacity. The funds moved through these structures and terminated in an offshore holding structure in the Cayman Islands. Vivian looked at the documents on the table. The total, Beverly said, as of 30 days ago is approximately $43 million. The room was quiet. Miles had his pen in his hand and was not writing. Vivian looked at the number, $43 million. She said it again silently, the way you say something a second time to confirm that it is what it is. Is this related to the prenuptial agreement? She asked. Beverly looked at Miles. Miles looked at Vivian. The marital concealment of assets is relevant to the divorce proceedings, Miles said. Your attorney, Francis, who drafted the infidelity clause, was thorough. The prenuptial agreement includes a clause on financial disclosure. Grayson certified at the time of the agreement that he had disclosed all material assets. If Hartwell Meridian Holdings and the associated LLC structure were in place before the marriage, they weren't, Vivian said. He formed Hartwell Meridian Holdings 4 years ago. I saw the registration documents. Miles nodded slowly. Then it falls within the marriage. More significantly, Beverly said, and her voice was the same tone it had been for everything. Because for Beverly Trent, everything had the same weight, the weight of accuracy. This may be material to a securities fraud investigation. Hartwell Industries is publicly traded. Routing company revenue into private offshore structures, without disclosure to shareholders or the SEC, is a matter that regulators take a significant interest in. The word sat in the room: fraud, not infidelity. Not the dance floor at the gala, not the woman in the red dress. Fraud. Miles set down his pen. Vivian looked at the courtyard fountain through the window. The board, she said. Yes, Beverly said. Does the board know? Some of them may suspect, Miles said. Corporate forensic investigation at this level typically involves the board's independent directors. If they have not already begun their own inquiry, this information will prompt one. Vivian thought about the Hartwell Industries board. She had sat at dinners with those people for 9 years. She had known their wives and their preferences, and which ones drank too much, and which ones were genuinely decent, and which ones were Grayson's men, and which ones were the old guard. She thought about Constance Hartwell's 5% stake. She thought about Reginald Hartwell, who had built the company and handed it to his son. She thought about what it would mean for both of them to learn what she had just learned. "Miss Calloway," Miles said. He put down his pen when he wanted her full attention. She had noticed this. "Your husband will realize soon, if he has not already, that you are building something. He will respond. I want you to be prepared for that." "I know how he responds," she said. "How?" "He moves before he thinks," she said. "He always has. It's one of the reasons he has been so successful. He acts faster than his opposition and then relies on his resources to manage the consequences." She paused. "But his resources are currently $43 million lighter than he thinks I know." Miles looked at her for a moment. The almost smile again. "Barely there, but there. I want you to call him," Miles said. "Tonight. Not to negotiate. Just to let him hear your voice. Let him try to read the situation." "And what should I say?" "As little as possible," Miles said. "But say one thing. Tell him you know about Hartwell Meridian Holdings." She drove back to the farmhouse. Dorothy was making dinner. Something involved onions. The kitchen smelled warm and ordinary. Vivian went upstairs. She sat on the edge of the guest bed. She picked up her phone. She found Grayson's name. For a moment, she just looked at it. Then she called. He picked up on the second ring. The warmth was there immediately. Managed. Practiced. The warmth he deployed when he was uncertain what he was walking into and wanted to control the entry point. "Viv," he said. "Thank God. I know about Hartwell Meridian Holdings," she said. The silence was immediate. A different silence from all the others. Dense. Alert. The silence of a man whose mind was moving very fast behind a face she could not see. "What?" he said. The word was too careful. Too small. "The offshore structure," she said. "Beverly Trent is very interested in it." Another silence. Then his voice changed. The warmth dropped away. The man who ran board meetings arrived. "Vivian," he said, "you need to be very careful about what you think you know." She had been waiting for those words for a long time without knowing she was waiting for them. "I am careful," she said. "I have been careful for 9 years. I am done being careful for your benefit." She hung up. Her hands were shaking, but it was not fear shaking them. It was something different. Something that felt like the very first moment you stop holding your breath after holding it for so long you forgot you were holding it. She went to the bathroom. She turned on the shower. She made it very hot the way she liked it when she was cold in her bones. She got in with her clothes off and her hair not pinned up, and she stood under the water until the hot ran out. She stood in the steam after the cold water drove her out. She looked at the fogged mirror. She wiped it. Somewhere along the way, she thought. Somewhere along the way, I became invisible. Not to the room, to myself. She looked at herself clearly, all of it, not invisible. Present. She had been present the entire time, watching, remembering, collecting. She had just been made to feel invisible, and she had for a long time been willing to feel it because it was easier than the alternative. The alternative being leaving. She was not leaving anymore. She had already left. Now she was building. She got dressed. She went downstairs. She ate dinner with Dorothy. She reorganized the spice cabinet afterward because she needed to do something with her hands. Dorothy watched from the kitchen table with her tea and said nothing. The spices were alphabetical by the time she was done. She had not intended to alphabetize them, but there they were, allspice to turmeric. Everything in its place. She slept. The contraction started at 2:17 in the morning. She was awake when they started. She had been awake for 2 hours, not thinking about Grayson, not thinking about the case or the folder or the $43 million. Just awake. The way she had been awake many times in the last weeks, her body doing its own calculations, preparing for something it knew was coming even when she was not ready. The first contraction was not dramatic. It was a tightening, a pressure that arrived and held and released, like something remembering to exist. She lay still and counted. 8 minutes, another. 8 minutes. She sat up. The guest room was dark. The window was dark. The farmhouse was quiet except for the sounds a very old house makes at 2 in the morning, which are not frightening sounds once you know them. She put her feet on the floor. She walked to her mother's door. She knocked. Dorothy opened it immediately. Fully dressed. In her good clothes. Not her nightgown, her good clothes. The ones she wore to church and to the bank and to anything that mattered. "I knew it was tonight," Dorothy said. "You've been dressed," Vivian said. "Since 11, Dorothy said. "Get your bag." In the car, on the gravel drive, backing out into the Virginia dark, heading toward the hospital where Dr. Harriet Blaine had privileges, Vivian had a thought that came at her sideways. He should be here. Not Grayson, the man she knew now. The man with the offshore accounts and the carefully managed lies. Not that man. The man she had chosen at 25. The one who had gotten down on one knee on old wood floors. The one she had believed in long enough to make a life with. That man. That version. The one she had spent 9 years hoping was the real one. She was grieving him. She understood in the backseat of her mother's car on a Virginia highway at 2 in the morning that the grief was not only for herself, it was for the marriage she thought she had, for the story she had been telling herself for 9 years, for the version of Grayson Hartwell that she had needed to exist so badly that she had helped him exist. She had been a co-author of the lie. Not because she was stupid, because she was faithful, and faithfulness in the wrong marriage becomes a kind of collaboration. She breathed through a contraction. She breathed through the grief. Starting over feels impossible, she thought, but staying feels worse. Dr. Harriet Blaine arrived at 4 in the morning. She had a coffee from a machine somewhere, and she looked like someone who had been up many times at 4 in the morning and had made her peace with it. She squeezed Vivian's shoulder. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I've been better," Vivian said. "You've also been worse," Harriet said. "This is not your worst." Vivian thought about that for a long time. She thought about it through the next contraction and the one after that. She thought about it when the epidural wore down toward morning and the pain arrived fully and demanded her complete attention. Was this her worst? She thought about the parking garage, the 11 minutes, the way the fluorescent light had flickered. She thought about the text from Cassandra. "He told me you were separated." She thought about the ring in the dish, the small sound it made, like crystal, like everything. "No," she thought, "this is not my worst. This is actually, in some way I cannot fully explain yet, one of the better things." The labor moved through the night. Dorothy sat in the chair beside the bed and held Vivian's hand during the hard contractions. She did not say breathe. She did not say you can do this. She just held the hand and was steady. Dorothy Calloway had been steady for 62 years and she was not going to stop now. The darkest part came sometime between 5 and 6 in the morning. The hour that has no name but exists in every long night. The hour when morning seems like a rumor. The pain was not manageable. The doubt arrived with it. The way doubt always chooses the moments when you are most vulnerable, because those are the only moments it can get through. "I don't know if I can do any of it." The case, the documents, the depositions, Beverly Trent's numbers, Miles Ashworth's careful pen, the months and months and months of it that were still ahead, and Eleanor, raising her, alone. Not alone like a woman with no resources. Alone like a woman who expected to do this with another person and is doing it without. "I don't know if I can." Dorothy tightened her hand. Vivian looked at her mother. Dorothy's face was the most familiar face in the world to her. Every line of it, every particular arrangement of it when things were hard. Dorothy did not say anything. She just held the hand. And Vivian breathed and breathed and breathed. That was all. That was everything. One breath at a time through the darkest hour. Not heroic, not inspiring. Just the basic human act of continuing, she continued. "Eleanor Hartwell was born at 7:52 in the morning, 8 pounds, 2 ounces. The cry she made when she arrived was enormous. Not just loud, enormous. It filled every corner of that room and went beyond it, through the walls, into the hallway, into the entire morning. Dorothy, in the chair in the corner, put her face in both hands. The nurse placed Eleanor on Vivian's chest, and the world did what it does in that moment. It narrowed. Not the closing-in narrowing of pain and doubt and the long night. The opposite. The world narrowed to this. This specific weight. This specific warmth. This specific human being, red and furious and incredibly particular, pressing her face against Vivian's chest and breathing. Her breathing. Vivian put her hand on Eleanor's back. She could feel the rise and fall of it. That small lungs breathing the first air they had ever breathed. "I was not supposed to do this alone," she thought. And then, but I did. She stayed there. She did not speak. Eleanor's hand, the size of a walnut, found Vivian's finger and wrapped around it without intention. A reflex. A grip that was both mechanical and the most meaning-dense thing she had ever experienced. "I named you before you arrived," she thought. "I chose your name in October at my mother's kitchen table, while the dahlias were still orange in the garden. Before the depositions. Before the lawyers. Before any of it. Eleanor, strong, old. A name that has weathered things." "Eleanor," she said aloud. The baby could not hear her name yet, not really. Babies at this stage hear sound and warmth and presence, not words. But Vivian said it again anyway. "Eleanor Vivian Calloway." She paused. "We'll decide about the rest later." Dorothy laughed. It came out of her from somewhere deep and startled. She covered her mouth with both hands. It was the best sound. In the hours that followed, Vivian slept in pieces. She nursed. She watched the morning arrive fully through the hospital window. She watched Eleanor sleep in the bassinet and counted her breaths without meaning to. Penelope came at noon. She brought flowers that were so excessive they took up most of the windowsill. She had been crying before she arrived, which she did not acknowledge, and she sat on the edge of the bed and held Eleanor for approximately 4 minutes before she started crying again. "She's perfect," Penelope said. "I know," Vivian said. "She looks like you, I know." Penelope handed Eleanor back. She wiped her eyes. "What do you need?" "Nothing right now," Vivian said. "Just this." Penelope stayed for an hour. They talked about almost nothing. Normal things, easy things. The kind of conversation that holds space for all the things that are too large to say directly. At 12:47, Grayson sent a text. "I heard she arrived. She is my daughter. I need to see her." Vivian read the text. She put the phone down. She picked Eleanor up from the bassinet. Eleanor's face in the afternoon light was different from her face at 7:52 in the morning. She was already changing. She would keep changing. Every day and every hour, she would be slightly different from who she was the day before and the hour before. She was entirely new and entirely herself right now, at this moment. "My children will not grow up thinking this is normal," Vivian thought. "They will not grow up in a house where love is performance, where presence is conditional on usefulness, where the person you depend on most is also the person most likely to reshape reality to suit themselves. That is not a home. That is a management structure." She texted Miles, "She's here. 8 pounds 2 ounces. And I'm ready." She turned off her phone. She held Eleanor. The afternoon light moved across the hospital room floor. The flowers on the windowsill were exactly as excessive as Penelope. Vivian sat in the chair beside the bassinet and held her daughter and watched the light move and let herself have this. Just one afternoon of it, uninterrupted. One afternoon before the work resumed. She had earned one afternoon, 6 weeks. Dorothy's farmhouse had become something it had not been in years. A working house, a house in motion, a house with a purpose beyond ordinary domesticity. The dining room table was covered in documents. Beverly Trent had sent the full report. 17 pages, single-spaced, with numbered exhibits. Beverly Trent did not do anything without exhibits. Vivian had read it 3 times. Eleanor slept in the portable bassinet. Dorothy had set up near the window, in the spot where the morning light came through warmest. She slept like someone who had very important things to do in dreams and was attending to them. Miles called at 9 on a Monday morning. He did not call often. When he called, it meant something. "Beverly has completed her preliminary assessment," he said. "We are on speakerphone. Beverly is on the line." "Good morning, Vivian," Beverly Trent said. "Good morning." "I'll be direct," Beverly said. She was always direct. It was her defining quality, and Vivian had come to rely on it the way you rely on a compass, not because it tells you what you want to hear, but because it tells you where you actually are. Hartwell Meridian Holdings is a vehicle for asset concealment. Over 18 months, Grayson Hartwell has routed approximately $43 million in Hartwell Industries operating revenue through a series of LLCs into an offshore structure in the Cayman Islands. The transactions are consistent with a pattern of intentional concealment from Hartwell Industries shareholders and from the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission. She paused, "Not for drama." Beverly Trent did not do drama, for accuracy. "This is not only a marital concealment issue," she said. "This is potential securities fraud." Eleanor made a small sound from the bassinet. "Not a cry, a commentary," the board, Vivian said. "3 of the 5 independent directors are already aware that something is wrong," Miles said. "I have it from a reliable source that they have engaged their own counsel. They have been conducting a quiet review." "Reginald Hartwell," Vivian said. "He built the company. He handed it to Grayson. He is going to have a view on this." "Yes," Miles said, "he is." Vivian looked at the documents on the table. $43 million, 18 months, a structure built carefully. Built by someone who understood exactly how not to be seen. She thought, "I know exactly who taught him that. I taught him that, not the fraud." But the invisibility. The practice invisibility of a person who moves through rooms and is never fully seen. He had watched her do it for 9 years. He had taken that idea and inverted it. He had disappeared himself too, only into money instead of into grace. She said, "What does the timeline look like?" Miles said, "The board's review will conclude within 4 to 6 weeks. At that point, depending on what they find, they may move to remove Grayson from the CEO position or place him on administrative leave pending regulatory investigation. Either way, the structure of the company will shift. In my case, moves in parallel," Miles said. "The divorce proceedings are separate from the regulatory matter, but the evidence overlaps significantly. Beverly's report is central to both." Beverly said, "I want to be clear about something. The $43 million does not disappear from the marital estate just because it is offshore. Courts have jurisdictional mechanisms for recovering concealed assets in divorce proceedings. The prenuptial agreement's financial disclosure clause, combined with the infidelity clause, positions you well." Vivian sat back. She thought about Francis 9 years ago, holding that infidelity clause in place. She thought about the checking account at the Bank of Virginia that she had never closed. She thought about 6 pages of handwritten notes in a pocket behind lavender sachets. She had spent 20 years, no, 9 years, but they had felt like 20, making herself smaller so he could feel larger. She was done shrinking. "What's my next step?" she asked. "I want you to make a call," Miles said. "Not to Grayson, to Constance Hartwell." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "She holds 5% of the stock," Miles said. "She is on the board as an advisory member. And from everything I know about Constance Hartwell, she will not allow her family's name to be attached to a fraud investigation without doing something about it." "You're right," Vivian said. "She won't." "Also," Miles said carefully, "I believe she cares about you." Vivian thought about Constance at the gala, appearing at her elbow. The way her eyes had changed when she followed Vivian's gaze to the dance floor. The pity in them. Not the performative kind. "I'll call her," she said. After the call, she sat at the dining room table for a long time. Eleanor woke up. Slowly. The way Eleanor did everything at her own pace, with complete self-possession. She looked at the ceiling. She made a sound. She looked at Vivienne. Vivienne picked her up. "We have a plan," she said. "It's a good plan. Miles has a good plan, and Beverly has good numbers, and I have 9 years of things I noticed without knowing I was supposed to notice them." She settled Eleanor against her shoulder. "And we have something none of them are accounting for." Eleanor grabbed a fistful of Vivienne's hair. "Exactly," Vivienne said. She reorganized the files on the table. She labeled everything. She made a second copy of Beverly's report and put it in the guest room closet, behind the lavender sachets, with her 6 original pages. Then she sat down and she called Constance Hartwell. It rang 3 times. "Vivienne," Constance said when she answered. Her voice was its usual precise self, every syllable in its proper place. No contractions, no sloppiness, but something different underneath. Something Vivian had not heard before in 9 years of Sunday dinners and charity galas and formal family holidays. Something that sounded like relief. "I think we need to meet," Vivian said. A pause. Longer than Constance's pauses usually were. "Yes," Constance said. "I think we do." The Georgian manor sat 30 miles from the nearest Hartwell Industries office. Constance had lived in it for 40 years. She had raised Grayson in it. She had run the social structure of an empire from its formal rooms. She knew every inch of it, and it knew her back the way houses do when someone has lived in them long enough and paid enough attention. The garden in November was subdued but not finished. There were things still going. Hardy things. Things that did not give up easily. Vivian rang the bell. Constance opened the door herself. She looked at Vivian for a moment. Then she stood aside. They went to the garden. Not the formal dining room. Not the sitting room where Constance received people she wanted to impress or intimidate. The garden. That told Vivian something. A woman brought tea, real tea. Constance poured it herself. She did not begin speaking until both cups were full. That too told Vivian something. She knows the value of preparing properly before you say the hard thing. "I know about the money," Constance said. Vivian was quiet. "How long?" she asked. "I suspected for 14 months, Constance said. "I confirmed it for myself 6 months ago." She set the teapot down with absolute precision, the way she did everything, with complete attention to exactly where the thing should be. "I want you to understand why I said nothing." "I would like to understand that," Vivian said. Constance looked at the garden, at the things still going, the hardy ones. "He is my son," she said. "That is not an excuse." "I know it is not an excuse, but I want you to understand it as context. I believed I needed to believe that he would see the risk, that he would understand what he was putting at stake, that he would choose to be better than this." She paused. "He did not make that choice." "No," Vivian said. "He did not." The Constance stopped. She started again, more carefully. "What he did at the gala was indefensible not only because of the insult to you, though that alone would have been indefensible, but because it was careless. It was public. It revealed that he no longer believes consequences apply to him." She looked at Vivian directly. "A man who believes he is exempt from consequences becomes dangerous." "Yes," Vivian said, "he does." They were quiet for a moment. The garden made its small sounds. Wind. A bird somewhere in the old oak at the fence line. Constance said, "I have been speaking with Reginald." "And he has been speaking with the board chair," she said. "There are 3 independent directors who have been conducting their own quiet review. Reginald has been in communication with them." She lifted her teacup. She put it down without drinking from it. "They want your cooperation." "In what form?" "Your testimony," Constance said. "Your personal knowledge of the structure, the documents, the timeline. Things that can be corroborated by Beverly Trent's report, but that need a human account to complete the picture." "I know," Vivian said. Miles has been preparing me for this. Constance looked at her. Something moved in her expression. 9 years of Sunday dinners and charity galas and formal family holidays. And Vivienne had learned to read Constance Hartwell the way you learn to read a difficult book carefully, slowly, willing to reread passages. What she saw now, she had never seen before. Respect. Not the polite respect Constance had always maintained. Something different, something you have to earn. You have been very measured about this, Constance said. I have been furious about this, Vivienne said. But fury is only useful if it is directed at the right thing. Constance was quiet for a moment. When Grayson was 8 years old, she said, he found a bird with a broken wing in this garden. He brought it inside. He nursed it for 3 weeks. He was very patient with it, very gentle. She looked at the garden. When it could fly again, he let it go. He stood there and watched it go, and he did not look sad. He looked satisfied. The way a person looks when they have done exactly what they set out to do. She picked up her tea. He is still that boy, she said. He does not do things by accident. He does not make careless mistakes. What he does because he believes he is capable of managing the consequences. She paused. He was wrong about what consequences he would face. Yes, Vivienne said. Because he was wrong about you, Constance said. Yes, Vivienne said again. The garden sat around them. The November light was thin and clear, honest about itself. What do you need from me? Constance asked. Vivienne thought about it. Your presence at the board meeting, she said. When it happens. Your 5%, your name. You have all three, Constance said. Without hesitation, you have always had them. I simply should have said so sooner. Reginald Hartwell appeared in the doorway of the manor. He looked at the table. He looked at his wife. He looked at Vivienne. He went back inside. He came back with a folder. He sat down slowly. With the deliberateness of a man who has made very significant decisions at very significant tables and knows exactly how much weight each one carries. He set the folder in front of Vivienne. The board chair wants your deposition, he said. His voice was the voice of a man who had built something enormous from the ground up. Low. Final. The voice of a man who understood foundations. They want it on record, in full. Before the meeting, Vivienne opened the folder. She looked at the document. It was a deposition notice, formal, complete. Her name at the top. She looked up at Reginald. He built this on something real, Reginald said. I want you to know that. What Grayson took was real. What he built before he started taking was real too. He met her eyes. I am not asking you to forget that. I am asking you to help us protect what remains of it. I know, she said. And for Eleanor, Reginald said. His voice changed slightly on the name, Queeter. More private. Her grandfather wants to know her, if you will allow it. Vivienne looked at him. This man who had built the empire and handed it to a son who had turned out to be less than the empire deserved. Yes, she said. I will allow it. She closed the folder. She drove home through the November afternoon, past the exit for the Hartwell estate, the penthouse, the nursery with the mural she had repainted twice until it was exactly right. She did not take the exit. She kept driving. She kept going. She knew he would move. She had told Miles he moves before he thinks. It is what he does. It is one of the reasons he is successful and one of the reasons he is here. Miles had said that is useful information. She had said, I know. That is why I'm telling you. On a Thursday morning, 5 weeks after Eleanor was born, her phone rang. Not Miles, not Beverly, not Constance or Penelope or Dorothy calling from the kitchen downstairs. An unfamiliar number. She let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was from Grayson's lead attorney, a man named Chester, who she had met at 3 different company events and who had always been precisely as pleasant as his professional situation required and no more. The message was brief. He was calling on behalf of his client. There was a matter he would like to discuss with her attorney at her earliest convenience. She called Miles. He's moving, she said. I heard, Miles said. Chester Mallory's office called here this morning. They are filing a motion in family court. Emergency custody arrangement. She sat down. What grounds, she asked. They are arguing that you have withheld Eleanor from her father, Miles said. His voice was level. Precise. The voice of a man who had seen this before. They are also referencing a history of anxiety treatment. The room was very quiet. He used my medical history, she said. He attempted to, Miles said. It is in the motion. She had told Grayson about the anxiety in their 2nd year of marriage. A conversation in the dark late at night. The kind of conversation you have only with someone you trust completely. She had gone to a doctor. She had taken something for 3 months. She had stopped when she felt better. It had never come up again. She had told him in the dark. He had filed it with a court. She breathed through it. Not quickly. She was learning to breathe through things deliberately the way the hospital had taught her in the hours before Eleanor arrived. What do we do? She asked. We file a response by end of day, Miles said. The motion has significant procedural weaknesses. Chester Mallory knows this. This motion is not about winning. It is about pressure. He wants to make me reactive, she said. Yes, he wants me to call him. To come to the table on his terms while I am frightened. Yes, Miles said. And you are not going to do that. No, she said. I am not. She put the phone down. She sat with it for a moment. The betrayal of it, the specific quality of it, not the lawsuit, not the custody motion. Those were tactics, and she had expected tactics. The medical history, the things she had said in the dark, in trust, in the intimate dark of a real marriage, which she had believed it to be. She had been crying in the shower so he could not hear. Now she understood there had never been anyone to hear. He had never been listening. He had been filing. She went to the living room. Eleanor was in the bouncy seat that Penelope had sent, which played a soft music box melody on a loop that Vivian had heard approximately 900 times in the past 5 weeks and had reached an uneasy peace with. She sat on the floor next to the bouncy seat. Eleanor looked at her. I know, Vivian said. I know, she called Cassandra. Cassandra picked up. Her voice immediately was wrong. Too careful. The careful voice of someone who has made a decision they have not made peace with. He called you, Vivian said. A pause. He said if I helped him, Cassandra said, her voice very low. He said he could protect my career, my position. He said the company would. You told him about Beverly Trent, Vivian said. Another pause. The kind that is its own answer. Cassandra, Vivian said, not with anger. She was past anger at this specific moment and into something cooler and more useful. I need you to understand something. He cannot protect your career. His career is ending. The board is meeting in 3 weeks. Reginald Hartwell is cooperating with the independent directors. Grayson is not going to be the CEO of Hartwell Industries by December 1st. Silence. Everything he promised you is a currency he no longer holds, Vivian said. He is spending money that is no longer in his account. More silence. She waited. That was the skill. The one she had spent 9 years developing without knowing she was developing it. Waiting without filling the silence. Letting the silence do its work. What do you need from me? Cassandra said. Her voice was different now. The careful quality was gone. What was underneath it was quieter and more honest. Your statement, Vivian said, in writing, everything. The account, the signing authority, what he told you, what he didn't tell you, all of it. A pause. Will it help? Cassandra asked. It will help everything, Vivian said, including you. You were also deceived. Your statement makes that clear. That matters, Cassandra. Legally and otherwise. Okay, Cassandra said. She said it quietly, without drama. The way people say the things they have been avoiding and then finally say and feel, somewhere deep in their chest, not the dread they expected, but something lighter. Something like the beginning of being done with it. Okay, she said again. 3 days later, the envelope arrived at Miles's office. Miles opened it. He read it twice. He called Vivian. It is 10 pages, he said. Vivian sat at the farmhouse table. Dorothy had taken Eleanor for a walk. The house was quiet. And? She asked. It is comprehensive, Miles said. It is damaging to him on multiple levels. The account, the instructions he gave her, the things he told her about the marriage. A pause. There is one section that is particularly relevant to your prenuptial agreement. What section? He told her he was planning to dissolve the marriage on his own timeline, Miles said. He told her he had set up the financial structure specifically to ensure that the dissolution would be, as he put it, managed in his favor. The room was very quiet. He said that to her, Vivian said. He said that to her, Miles confirmed. And she wrote it down. And now it is in a signed statement in my office. Vivian looked at the window. The November light came through, thin, clear, exact. I do not need to be saved, she thought. I need to save myself, Miles, she said. Yes? Tell me about the deposition, she said. Tell me everything I need to know. December. The deposition was on a Monday. Eleanor was 10 weeks old. Dorothy was with her at the farmhouse. They had established a rhythm, Vivian and Dorothy and Eleanor, the 3 of them in the old farmhouse with the spice cabinet alphabetized and the dahlias gone for winter and the wood stove going in the evenings. A rhythm that was the opposite of the penthouse. Quieter, warmer, more honest. Vivian wore the charcoal gray dress. It was new. She had bought it herself at a small shop in Roanoke with money from the Bank of Virginia account. She had stood in the dressing room and looked at herself in it and thought, yes, that is the right one. She wore her grandmother's small gold earrings. She wore nothing on her left hand. Miles met her in the lobby of the building at 8:45. He looked at her face. He was becoming good at reading her face, which was something she noticed and appreciated. She did not need to perform calm around Miles because Miles already knew what she was underneath the calm. Ready? He said. Yes, she said. The conference room was on the 14th floor. A long table. Big windows facing the Richmond skyline. Court reporter at one end with her machine. Chester Mallory and two other attorneys on one side, Miles and his associate on the other, Beverly Trent at a separate chair as expert witness, and Grayson. She had not been in a room with him since the gala 68 days. She had not spoken to him since the phone call, the one where she said, "I know about Hartwell Meridian Holdings," and he said, "You need to be very careful." He looked the same. That was the first thing she noticed. He looked exactly the same. Composed, well-dressed, in control of the room, or performing control of the room, which with Grayson had always been nearly the same thing. He was performing now. She could see it. After 9 years, she could read the difference between Grayson composed and Grayson performing composure. The set of his jaw was slightly too deliberate. The way he held his hands on the table was slightly too still. He was afraid. She sat down. She looked at him directly. He held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he looked at the table. She looked at the court reporter and the window and the gray December sky beyond it. She was ready. The deposition began. Chester Mallory was good at his job. She granted him that. He was thorough. He was strategic. He asked questions that seemed simple and were not. He built context. He established foundations. He was creating a frame around her that he hoped would be limiting. She answered everything. She was organized. She was precise. She did not embellish. She did not interpret. She did not offer more than the question required. She presented facts in the order they had occurred, with the specificity of a woman who had been paying close attention for 9 years while everyone assumed she was not. Chester said, "In the spring of 2022, you attended the Hartwell Industries board retreat in Palm Springs. Is that correct?" "Yes," she said. "In what capacity?" "As my husband's wife," she said. "I prepared the presentation materials. I coordinated the catering and the scheduling for the breakout sessions. I managed the communication with the venue, so you were not a participant in the board discussions." She looked at him. She said, "I was not credited as a participant. There is a difference." Chester looked at his notes. Grayson, beside him, did not move. She continued. "She answered every question. Some of them were difficult. Some of them required her to describe things that she would have preferred to keep private. The state of the marriage, specific incidents, the conversation she had heard between Grayson and his chief financial officer, the documents she had seen. She described each thing accurately. She did not dramatize. She did not diminish. At one point, Chester asked about her mental health history. Miles said, "Objection, relevance." Chester said, "Goes to the reliability of the witness." Miles looked at the deposition officer. Then he said calmly, to Vivian, "You may answer briefly." Vivian said, "I was treated briefly for anxiety in the 2nd year of my marriage. I was given a low-dose medication for 3 months. I stopped when I felt better. I have had no recurrence and no ongoing treatment." She paused. "The information about that treatment was shared with my husband in a private conversation. It was not shared so that he could include it in legal filings." She let that land. Chester moved on. The deposition lasted 3 hours and 47 minutes. At the end of it, Chester gathered his papers. Grayson was the first person to stand. He stood and he looked at Vivian one more time. She looked back. He was the same man who had danced at a gala with Cassandra Pruitt while his 8 months pregnant wife watched from near the window. He was also, in this moment, a man who understood that he had lost something he did not realize he had until he had lost it, not the marriage. He had discarded that himself, the certainty that she would not fight back. She held his gaze. He looked away first. In the elevator, Miles stood beside her in silence until the doors closed. "You were excellent," he said. She nodded. "How are you?" She thought about it. Honestly, the way she was learning to think about things, without the social answer rising automatically. "Hungry," she said. He laughed, full and warm, filling the small elevator. She laughed too. They went to the diner across the street. They ate actual food. She had a grilled cheese on white bread with too much butter. He had a Reuben with extra mustard. They drank coffee, hers decaf, his actual. They talked about nothing important for 45 minutes. It was the most ordinary afternoon she had had in months. It was perfect. December 5th. The Hartwell Industries emergency board meeting was called for 9 in the morning. Vivian was not there. She was at the farmhouse. Dorothy had made something involving cinnamon. The smell of it sat in every room. Eleanor was awake, and in the high chair attachment Dorothy had found in a catalog, deeply occupied with her own hands, which she appeared to be discovering this week. Miles was at the board meeting. Beverly Trent was at the board meeting. Constance Hartwell was at the board meeting, with her 5% of Hartwell Industries stock. Reginald Hartwell was at the board meeting. As a former board member and the man whose name was on the building, Vivian sat at the farmhouse table and watched Eleanor investigate her own fingers and waited. At 2:47 in the afternoon, her phone buzzed. Miles phase 1 complete. She put the phone down. She picked Eleanor up from the high chair. Eleanor grabbed her hair. First thing. Always the hair. I know, Vivian said. I know. We're waiting. She walked the length of the farmhouse living room, back and forth. Eleanor looking over her shoulder at the world from this new height, interested in everything. Dorothy came out of the kitchen with a dish towel in her hand. She looked at Vivian. He resigned, Dorothy said. It was not a question. I don't know yet, Vivian said. He resigned, Dorothy said, and went back into the kitchen. Miles called at 4:15. She answered immediately. He resigned, Miles said. The board gave him the option at 10 this morning. He negotiated with Chester Mallory for 4 hours. He accepted at 2:30. She breathed. The criminal matter, she said. The board has agreed to cooperate with SEC regulators in their investigation, Miles said. Grayson's cooperation with regulators is part of the negotiated terms of the resignation. His attorneys are in conversation with the SEC. It will be a long process. But it has begun, the divorce, she said. A pause. Different from Miles's usual pauses. Chester Mallory called me from the parking garage, he said. While I was walking to my car, he wants to settle. His client is prepared to honor the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause in full. Another pause. And he is prepared to negotiate an additional sum in recognition of the documented financial concealment over the course of the marriage. She was quiet. Additionally, Miles said, they are withdrawing the custody motion entirely. The farmhouse was quiet around her. Eleanor made a sound. Content. Small. Vivian? Miles said. I'm here, she said. You don't have to respond today. Or this week. Take your time with the terms. I know, she said. Tell Chester. She stopped. She thought about it. Tell Chester we'll review the terms Thursday. I'm busy right now. A pause. Then I will tell him. She hung up. She stood in the middle of the farmhouse living room with Eleanor in her arms. Dorothy appeared in the kitchen doorway. Well, she said. Vivian looked at her mother. She said, he resigned. Dorothy nodded. She went back into the kitchen. The sound of a cabinet opening. The sound of the good plates, the china ones, not the everyday blue-bordered ones. Vivian carried Eleanor to the window. The December light outside was thin and precise. The old oaks were bare now. The garden was put away for winter. The gravel drive wound out to the road in the gray afternoon. She thought about the gala, 600 people, the orchestra, the way the crystal clinked. She thought about the parking garage, the 11 minutes, the engine running. She thought about driving north. She thought about the ring in the dish and the sound it made. A clink, like crystal, like everything. She thought about what she had said to Eleanor in the hospital room the day after she was born, when she was holding her in the afternoon light. We did it. She said it again now, quietly, into Eleanor's hair. We did it, little one. Eleanor held onto her hair and pressed her face into the curve of Vivian's neck and breathed. January, a new year. Vivian's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building she had chosen herself. Not the largest building on the block. Not the most impressive. The one with the tall windows and the wood floors and the second bedroom that caught the afternoon light best. She had painted Eleanor's room pale yellow. Not from a decorator's palette. From a paint chip she had found in a hardware store on a Tuesday, holding it up in different corners of the room until she found the light that made it exactly right. The walls of the living room were mostly empty still. She was filling them slowly, one piece at a time. Her eye, her history, her particular way of seeing the world that she had spent 9 years not imposing on anyone. On the wall opposite the window, she had hung a painting by Margot. A new one. She had seen it at Margot's November show. She had stood in front of it for a long time. It was lit from inside the way Margot's paintings always were. She had bought it the same day. She had texted Margot that night. Margot had responded in 20 minutes. No hesitation. No performance. Just, I missed you. Let's have coffee. Sunday coffee was back. Different coffee shop, same essential thing. The settlement was finalized in the 2nd week of January. The terms were by any measure significant. Miles had not gloated about this. He had presented the signed agreement with the same steady efficiency with which he had presented everything else. But there was something in his face when she read through the final numbers that was not quite a smile and not quite pride, but was in the vicinity of both. She had not taken everything. She had not tried to. She had taken what was documented, what was fair, what was owed. The prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, the financial concealment premium, Eleanor's trust fully funded and structured for the long term, her own settlement, enough to make choices from a position of freedom rather than survival. She had also, through Miles, negotiated something that was not in any financial document. A formal acknowledgement in the record that the information about her anxiety treatment had been obtained from a private marital communication and had not been appropriate for inclusion in legal filings. It was a small thing. In the scale of $43 million in a securities fraud investigation, it was a very small thing, but it mattered to her. It mattered that the record showed that was private, that was trust, and it was used incorrectly. She had insisted on it. Miles had gotten it. The Whitmore Foundation called in December. Not the same Whitmore as 11 years ago. New leadership, new director. A woman named Frances Alcott who, when she called, said immediately, "I want to be clear that I am not calling because of what happened. I am calling because I have been watching your eye for years." Vivian had said, "My eye?" Frances had said, "You have been quietly acquiring work that other people overlooked. I have been paying attention to it. The artist Margot Henley's early pieces that are now worth 3 times what they were. The Ostrander photographs that you loaned to the Mitchell Museum 2 years ago. Your loans, your correspondence, your recommendations. You have been operating as a curatorial intelligence without a curatorial title." Vivian had been quiet for a moment. Then she had said, "I wasn't sure I was allowed to." Frances had said, "I want to offer you the curatorial director position. Start date of your choosing. It is frankly well overdue." They had spoken every week in December and January. By February, Vivian was ready. Penelope came for dinner on the first Thursday of the month. She brought 2 bottles of wine because she had not had enough wine in the last 5 months and felt she needed to make up for lost time. She sat on the floor and built block towers for Eleanor to knock down. Eleanor knocked every one of them over immediately. Each time she looked at Penelope with an expression of genuine satisfaction. "She's very good at that," Penelope said. "She's very good at a lot of things," Vivian said from the kitchen. She was making pasta. She had forgotten for a while that she could cook. It had been Grayson's chef for 9 years. The penthouse kitchen, state-of-the-art and largely ceremonial. She cooked now. She cooked all the time. She had discovered that she was actually good at it and had opinions about it, and found it in the way she found Margot's paintings, lit from inside. "You seem like yourself," Penelope said, catching a block Eleanor had knocked toward her. "I am," Vivian said. "More than," Penelope stopped. "Then, more than you have in years, if I'm being honest." "You are always being honest," Vivian said. "It is one of your most useful qualities and also occasionally your most exhausting one." "I should have told you about Cassandra 4 months earlier," Penelope said. "I want to say that. On the record." Vivienne put the pasta spoon down. She turned from the stove. "You didn't know what I would do with it," she said. "And neither did I, So, Penelope said. "So we're fine," Vivienne said. She turned back to the pasta. The apartment smelled like garlic and pasta water and the particular warmth of a kitchen being used by someone who is paying attention to it. The windows steamed slightly. Eleanor knocked another tower over. Penelope built another one. She finally understood something she had been turning over for weeks. The prison door had been unlocked all along. Not Grayson's prison. She had told herself it was his doing, his control, his system. And it was. He was real. The control was real. The manipulation was real. But the door. She had kept herself on the inside of the door as long as she had needed to. Because on the outside of the door was this, the choice. The requirement of choosing. The responsibility of being fully, completely, unapologetically herself. She had not been ready for that until now. She was the warden who had believed the story of the locked door because it was easier than admitting the door was open. She was not her own warden anymore. She turned back to the pasta. She said, "I'm taking the Whitmore position." Penelope stopped mid-block. "Vivian, I know, that is, I know. When?" "March 1st, she said. "I start March 1st. Penelope said nothing for a moment. Eleanor, apparently bored with the lack of building, looked at the ceiling fan with her full morning attention. "Your mother is going to lose her mind," Penelope said. "My mother is going to act like she always knew," Vivian said. "And she will be right." Penelope laughed. Vivian laughed too. The pasta was done. February. A Saturday morning. The apartment was quiet in the particular Saturday way that is different from weekday quiet. Slower. More inhabited. The kind of quiet that has permission to be quiet and is taking advantage of it. Eleanor had been awake since 6. She was not unhappy about it. She simply woke up at 6 every day as if she had somewhere to be and was allowing herself the courtesy of getting ready. She woke up looking at the ceiling with the expression of someone greeting an old acquaintance. "Good morning, ceiling. Good morning, light. Good morning, world." Vivian had been awake before her. She had been standing at the tall window with her decaf, watching the February morning arrive. The sky was doing the thing it does in February, which is being completely honest about itself. No performance. Just the actual pale gray of it, with the actual cold behind the glass, and beneath it the city beginning at Saturday. She could hear Dorothy in the kitchen. Dorothy had arrived Thursday. She was staying through the weekend. She had brought food, as she always did, as if Vivian could not be trusted to feed herself and Eleanor without a contribution from the Virginia farmhouse, and she had settled into the apartment with the same unhurried competence with which she settled into everything. She was making something that involved cinnamon. The smell of it was moving through the apartment in waves, warm and exact. Vivian stood at the window. She thought about the last time she had stood at a window and watched a morning arrive. The hospital. Eleanor's first morning, the parking lot light that came through the hospital window, the thin shine of it on the floor. That had been one kind of morning. This was another. Eleanor was on the playmat in the living room, working on sitting up. She had been working on it for 3 weeks. She would get most of the way there. She would achieve this magnificent, wobbling, upright position that looked like triumph, and then she would topple sideways. She was never distressed by this. She would look at the ceiling from her sideways position for a moment. She would locate Vivienne, or Dorothy, or whoever was nearby. She would communicate something with her eyes that Vivienne had interpreted over 3 weeks as interesting. Let me try that again. Then she would try again. Vivienne watched her from the window. She thought, that is everything, actually. That is the whole thing right there. The willingness to try again from the sideways position, without distress, with genuine interest in what the next attempt might produce. Dorothy appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She's almost there, Dorothy said, watching Eleanor. Every day, Vivienne said, a little bit further each time. That is how it works, Dorothy said. She went back into the kitchen. Vivienne heard the oven, something going in. Her phone was on the table by the window. It buzzed once. A text from Penelope. Happy Saturday. Tell Eleanor I said hi. She texted back. She says hi. She put the phone down. She looked at the apartment, the Margot painting on the wall, the books on the shelves, her books, the ones she had taken from the penthouse and supplemented with the ones she had been wanting to read for years and kept putting off because she was busy being Grayson Hartwell's wife. The art books were stacked on the coffee table, not arranged decoratively, stacked the way you stack books you are actually reading, with multiple bookmarks sticking out at different angles, with notes on post-it flags, with the lived-in look of something being actively used. She had been preparing for March 1st the way she had always prepared for things she cared about, completely, with her whole attention. The phone rang. Not a text, a call. Frances Alcott, she answered. I wanted to call before Monday, Frances said. She had a direct voice, warm but efficient. The voice of someone who understood that time was the thing you could not get back and had made peace with spending it honestly. The board approved the curatorial director position formally at yesterday's meeting. It is yours. Start date of your choosing. We said March 1st, but if you need more time. March 1st is right, Vivienne said. Good, Frances said. We are very glad to have you. I'm very glad to be had, Vivienne said. A pause. The comfortable kind. The kind between people who are going to work well together and can already feel it. One more thing, Frances said. The Margot Henley show. We are considering bringing it to the Whitmore in the fall. I would like your eye on the curation. Vivienne looked at the painting on her wall. Margot's painting. The one lit from inside. The one she had stood in front of for a long time in November and had bought the same day and had driven home with in her back seat and had hung on the wall of an apartment she had not yet moved into because she knew where it needed to go before she knew anything else about the space. Yes, she said. I would love that. She hung up. She stood by the window for a moment. The February light was doing something specific with the angle of the morning. It was coming through the glass and hitting the floor at a particular slant and then bouncing up to catch the Margot painting from below. The painting was lit from inside already. The light from the window made it more so. Eleanor, on the mat, pushed herself upright. She wobbled. She held 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she toppled sideways. She looked at the ceiling from her sideways position. She looked at Vivienne, crouched down to, she said, I saw that 5 whole seconds. Eleanor grabbed her hair. I know, Vivienne said. You're right, it doesn't matter how long. It matters that you did it. She lifted Eleanor up. Eleanor looked over her shoulder at the window, at the February light coming through. Dorothy appeared in the kitchen doorway again. She was holding 2 mugs. She handed one to Vivienne, decaf, already made. The right temperature. Dorothy Calloway had been anticipating what people needed for 62 years, and she was not going to stop now. The 3 of them stood at the window. The February morning stretched out below and before them. The city on a Saturday. People walking with coffee cups and dogs, and the particular unhurried quality of a morning that has given them permission. Vivienne thought about the gala. She let herself think about it directly, without flinching. 600 people. The orchestra. The midnight blue dress. The dance floor. The hand on the small of a back. The ring in the dish. The clink of it. Like crystal. Like everything ending and beginning at the same time. She thought about the parking garage. The 11 minutes, the engine running. The phone face down on the seat. She thought about driving north. The radio she did not hear. The gravel drive at 2 in the morning. The light her mother left on. She thought about the prenuptial agreement and the infidelity clause and the woman named Frances who had held it in place against 3 lawyers who had not wanted it there. She thought about Beverly Trent and her 17 documents and her voice that said everything with the same weight because for her everything had the weight of accuracy. She thought about Miles Ashworth and his courtyard fountain and his pen and the almost smile that was the highest compliment he offered. She thought about Cassandra Pruitt across a small table in a coffee shop in a town that did not care about the Hartwell family. The way her eyes had closed for half a second. The way she had looked, beneath the red dress and the polished performance, like someone who had been handed the wrong story and had tried to live inside it until she couldn't. She thought about Constance Hartwell in her garden, the hardy things still going. The 5% of Hartwell Industries stock. The way she had said, "You have always had them. I simply should have said so sooner." She thought about Reginald Hartwell with his folder and his particular gravity and the way he said Eleanor's name. Quieter than everything else. She thought about Penelope on the floor building towers for Eleanor to destroy. She thought about Dorothy, always. Dorothy. She thought about 9 years. She thought about who she had been at 25 when she said yes before he finished asking, in an apartment that smelled like coffee and old wood floors, to a man she had believed in completely. She had not been wrong to believe in him. She had been wrong to keep believing after the evidence shifted. But that shift had been designed to be invisible. It had been managed, incremental. The kind of change that happens so gradually that you are standing in the middle of it before you know you've moved. She had moved, and eventually she had noticed. That was enough. It was not always the enormous dramatic moment of recognition. Sometimes it was just, at the gala, watching the dance floor, and knowing. She had known. She had known for longer than she had admitted. And when knowing became impossible to unknow, she had stopped unknowing it. She had put her ring in the dish. She had walked to the door. Whatever comes next, she thought. She looked at Eleanor in her arms. Eleanor, who had sat up for 5 whole seconds this morning and then looked at the sideways ceiling with interest rather than distress. She looked at the Margot painting on the wall, lit from inside and now lit from outside too, by February light that had traveled all the way across the morning to arrive here and do this. She looked at the city below, going about its Saturday. She felt Dorothy beside her, warm and present, not going anywhere. I am ready, she thought. Not brave in the dramatic sense, not unafraid, not without the particular ongoing grief that comes with dismantling the life you thought you had and building the one that is actually yours, but ready, ready in the way that Eleanor was ready. One attempt at a time, from the sideways position when necessary, with genuine interest in what the next attempt might produce. Eleanor made a sound, not a word, not yet. But the sound she made when she was satisfied with where she was. The sound of a person who is exactly where she should be at exactly the right time, with the right people in the right light. Ready? Vivienne said. To Eleanor. To the morning. To herself. Eleanor tightened her grip on the handful of hair. Yes. That was the word. In the language only the two of them spoke. Yes. They stood at the window together, the 3 of them, and the February light came through the glass, and the Margot painting was lit from inside and outside both, and the city below them was going about its ordinary Saturday, and the cinnamon smell from Dorothy's kitchen filled every room, and the morning was entirely, specifically, undeniably theirs.